When the Iranian Navy broadcasted that all navigation through the Strait of Hormuz was forbidden, they backed the threat with missiles and drones. Within hours, one of the world's busiest maritime arteries ground to a halt. The geography of the region creates a massive bottleneck. This single 20-mile-wide chokepoint is responsible for carrying 20% of the entire world's oil supply. A total blockade here should have been a catastrophe. Yet 1 month into the war, global oil production only contracted by about 8%. Prices, however, reacted with total volatility. While the supply drop was small, oil prices spiked a massive 60%, 7.5 times more than the actual contraction in supply. This is a mathematical paradox. If the physical supply of oil stayed largely intact, why did the global market react as if the wells had run dry? The answer starts with physical engineering. Smaller nations like Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait were caught in an existential trap. They are 100% reliant on tankers transiting the waterway to export their product. But the region's larger producers had been building an insurance policy for decades. The United Arab Emirates spent years constructing a pipeline that sends a majority of its production directly to the port of Fujairah, bypassing the strait entirely. Even Iran developed a similar strategy. They moved away from their primary terminal at Karg Island, building their own bypass pipeline to the port of Jask to ensure their exports could continue even if they closed the strait to others. Iraq mitigated the blockade through northern diplomacy. By reaching a deal with the autonomous region of Kurdistan and Turkey, they were able to divert hundreds of thousands of barrels a day through an overland pipeline. Saudi Arabia maintains the ultimate contingency plan. Their 1,200-kilometer east-west pipeline connects their primary fields to the Red Sea coastline, allowing them to remain the world's third-largest producer despite the blockade. This physical bypass network successfully protected the majority of the region's production. These massive engineering projects meant that most of the oil never actually needed to pass through the missiles in the strait. By utilizing decades of quiet physical engineering, the Gulf nations solved the first half of the paradox. They kept the oil flowing. But if the supply was largely saved, we're still left with that 60% price jump. That part of the mystery is explained by the cold math of human behavior. Economists call this elasticity of demand. How much a price has to rise before people stop buying a product. Think about breakfast cereal. Cereal is highly elastic. If the price of your favorite brand rises 10%, research shows demand drops 30% because consumers simply buy another brand or switch to eggs. Oil is the opposite, with an elasticity of negative 0.1. Because internal combustion engines and trucking have no immediate substitutes, you can't just stop driving. To force an 8% drop in oil use, the price becomes astronomically expensive. Modern society is locked into its oil consumption. When that supply contracts even slightly, a brutal price shock is the only way the market can force demand to drop. This math is managed by fallible actors, commodity traders. They move the market based on narrative, betting on what prices will do weeks or months in the future. In the first days of the war, traders underreacted. They believed the official narrative that this would be a limited, short-term conflict, so they kept prices relatively stable. Then the narrative hit a wall. The Joint War Committee abruptly canceled all maritime war risk insurance for the region with only 72 hours' notice. This created an invisible blockade. When insurance was finally re-offered, the premiums had spiked more than tenfold, adding massive new costs to every single journey out of the Gulf. A single crude carrier holds cargo worth upward of $130 million. Shipowners simply cannot afford the risk of sailing such an immense financial liability without comprehensive insurance. The physical pipelines bypassed the missiles, but bureaucratic fallout from the war broke the market. This financial paralysis finally drove the 60% spike. The 60% price explosion resulted from the collision of three specific pressures: rigid consumer demand, trader panic, and exorbitant insurance costs. For decades, the global market assumed that the wealthy, developed Gulf states were isolated from the region's instability. That belief has been shattered. These serene coastlines belay a deep geopolitical fragility. Iran proved they could shut down the region's economy overnight, and the markets have taken notice. Global oil prices now reflect a baseline of geopolitical risk. Until the region finds true stability, every gallon at the pump carries a permanent uncertainty tax.